For myself or somebody else.
I appreciate you so much. I'm really excited because this is the first time in the past 4 years that I have gotten a chance to do the way with Anoa. And there's so much going on right now. And you are one of the people, y'all. I am talking with the amazing and illustrious and ever so gracious Tia Oso, who is the new director at Media 2070 of the Media 2070 project. Is that correct? I have
That is correct, Senior Director.
amazing, amazing. And yes, there's so much going on right now. And we first connected over a tweet you had, um, seeing just what was going on with the, nonsense and foolishness. First, the LA Times refused to endorse. Then we had the Washington Post, which is run by Jeff Bezos. Ultimately, he's the owner. Blue. I don't know if it's Blue Steel. I know that's a Zoolander reference, but it's Blue something. It's his company that has dealings with the federal government, and there really is this chilling effect right now. So we obviously have the very clear white racist South African billionaires like Peter Thiel and Elon Musk. I actually did not realize there's a whole like quartet of these white racist South African billionaires. Where their billions come from, I have no clue. Who are backing Donald Trump. But then we have the spineless, like, kind of like, oh, I'm just trying to do the right thing nonsense of folks like the LA Times owner, whose name is blank, I'm blanking on, but also of, you know, uh, Jeff Bezos. Democracy dies in the darkness was a tagline that Washington Post came out with in 2017 at the outset of the Trump administration, and now we're seeing this real this backtracking of the duty. So just thinking about like everything we've seen over the past week in particular, but like really since the so-called racial reckoning of 2020, how is media like failing to show up in this moment while we're simultaneously telling people everyone is, and this is all hands on deck moment for democracy?
Yeah, it's such a good question. And the way that you just laid everything out, Noah, the idea that we have, 3 to 4 billionaires that have, really, this is the 2 year anniversary of Elon Musk buying Twitter. And the LA Times billionaire owner's name is Patrick Soon-Shang. And he is actually a biotech billionaire, which is also interesting. It's like, how many aspects of our lives is this man trying to control? Um, you have a small handful of white billionaires controlling what millions of people are able to see and read and hear, and also controlling, right, the workers and the missions of these newspapers in particular, because, a newspaper editorial board, their role is to share opinions and perspectives. And for those that take their mission very seriously, the role of journalism is supposed to be, the fourth estate, right? And supposed to be informing the public and supporting the public and being well informed and well educated about the truth. And, we can all talk about what that truth is and what is the truth, and especially in this day and age. But to see them wielding their control during, the most important election since the last election. I'll be sarcastic when I say that because they're all important. But, standing in between a future where democracy is possible and a future where it actually looks even more bleak than it already is, of whether or not we're going to be able to maintain a multiracial democracy and strive forward in building a multiracial democracy in the United States of America. To For the LA Times and Washington Post and other Gannett owned, Gannett News Group owned entities to refuse to or be stifled from endorsing, at this point, it's clear that they were trying to endorse Kamala Harris, is really frightening to see them, a small group of very wealthy people, wield their power in such a way and unapologetically about it. Now they've, released statements making excuses for themselves. And also, there was something about the way that Jeff Bezos' statement was framed, where he said, our industry, as though he's a media maker or a journalist. And it's like, what? Who are you talking about? Our and we. There's clearly not an R and a we. Um, Makes me think that the warning signs have always been there from the days of media consolidation, and the fact that we have heard but not heeded the warnings of people that are considered to be super radical, right? And those of us who critique billionaires and the billionaire class, and the ways that they, are wielding their influence in our society, it is really, it's frightening. And I think that it is important for us to understand the role of the media really robustly to understand what this moment means and why they're making these moves. Because this is not just about, Donald Trump being their friend or their buddy, but this is also about how they see their role in society, and that it is their right to, right, amass billions, exploit and influence. There are people who are threatening to control the economy and tank the economy if the person that they want to be in power doesn't win. It's important for us to understand that this is amounts to class warfare, and that's why I put in my tweet. Uh, People were upset when we started hashtagging Eat the Rich, but the rich have been eating our democracy, and now we're seeing them spit out the bones. In my opinion, by saying, "Oh no, you're not going to endorse a presidential candidate. You're not allowed to do that." An editorial board has been doing this for literally decades.
Absolutely. And like what you just said is so about the decades. The LA Times has not taken a stance since 1988. Right? Like that, like everyone's let that settle in. Like it's been since 1988, since the last time the LA Times refused to give an endorsement, right? And so we're seeing the major papers of record nationally, LA Times, New York Times, are also not endorsed. I mean, we're seeing this happening. We are seeing, outlets like the Grio and other folks like saying like, hey, we are going to we recognize our
Yes.
assignment in this moment and we're going to do this, not because it is about, just being lockstep for one candidate or another, but just really recognizing like what is the moment and how we're dealing with it. Something else you touched on, especially about the eat the rich part, right? We've already been watching the robber baron class decimate media, local media, our national media infrastructure. We've seen massive layoffs. And, I definitely empathize with folks who do work for these outlets who are like, hey, you're not hurting Jeff Bezos' bottom line. He's a billionaire. You're hurting those of us who work here. But at the same time, like, how do we leverage, like people are saying vote with your subscriptions or not vote with your subscriptions, so to speak, right? But like how do we send a message? Allegedly, reportedly, according to NPR, Washington Post has lost 250,000 subscribers since this decision happened. I believe it's an estimated between like 5 and like 15 or 18,000, something smaller, but still significant for the LA Times. People are fed up with this nonsense, particularly since these are outlets that literally have built up their subscriber base over the last 7 years on the so-called resistance, on so-called liberals and those progressives who do subscribe there, like, but what are we really seeing in terms of this media ecosystem and what, those of us who are in the media space or adjacent to the media space have already been saying has been the problem. But what are we really getting at when we're thinking and looking at and seeing the way in which, to your point, we have this very elite group of moneyed individuals that are controlling the flow of information, that are controlling jobs, opportunity, what actually gets invested in what we're calling information and news. Like, what is the problem, and then what should we be looking towards as a possible solution or potential alternative?
Yeah, those are really good questions. I definitely want to shout out the local news outlets and independent journalistic outlets that have been making sure to publicize and promote their endorsements and making endorsements almost as a resistance, right? And as an answer to the silencing and the censorship of these major corporate, right, editorial boards. And I think it's important that we do call it censorship because that's what it is. It's interesting that if these same outlets were to refuse to publish opinions, right, for either candidate, they would be accused of censorship. And then here we go having these billionaires censor their own editorial teams from doing their jobs. I want to shout out Joe Torres and Juan Gonzalez, News for All the People, as the kind of forebearers of this work. And Media 2070, we stand in this tradition of really understanding that at the roots of our corporate media system in the United States is racism, is exploitation, is the criminalization of non-white people, especially black people and indigenous people. And so this is actually not beyond the pale for newspapers to be controlled by wealthy billionaires or wealthy people who happen to be racist or anti-democratic are union busters. These are it's actually a part and parcel of the types of people who have practiced media ownership, and so it's important for us to not just recognize and support local independent journalism, nonprofit newsrooms, and those who are citizen journalists, right? It is important for us to understand that they stand in a tradition of the resistance to these wealthy individuals who use news media to strengthen and enrich themselves, as well as to advance a political agenda, a white supremacist agenda, and to align themselves with as a ruling class and a leading class. That is absolutely at the roots and the heart of our media system here in the United States. So it's really important for us to understand that. And it's important for us to understand, my heart definitely goes out to the reporters and the journalists who are employed by these organizations who, as you said, they have been, consolidating and massive layoffs at major and smaller media organizations across the country for quite a while now. I'm also going to call in the Writers Guild and actors SAG after strikes from last year, and the ways that we saw the billionaire corporate owners of studios putting the squeeze on those workers in order to, again, not just to consolidate their wealth but to consolidate their power. And it's important for our newspaper employees, reporters, anchors to understand themselves as workers, and I expect to see a renewed sense of their worker identity and the fact that they need to see themselves not just as people who are, reporting on what's happening, commenting on what's happening, building the reputation of their news outlets, right, from telling the stories about the resistance and popular movements, but they actually need to see their role in it as well in our society, as participants in the democracy, in the fact that they also need to be a part of the resistance. The fact that I'm seeing pleas for people not to cancel their subscriptions and not seeing a strikes announced is really troubling to me, and I think that it is. I hope that it is a wake up call, right, for members of the media and especially the journalists to understand that they're not just the the archivists, right, and the storytellers and the narrators of this moment. You're beyond narrating this moment and recording history. You are a part of history, and they need to understand what their role is in it.
Absolutely. And I really appreciate you like making that point about not being just simply the archivists and recorders, right? Like, I'm sure like someone we all have in common, Ida B. Wells. I made my own little
Absolutely.
camera print. I'm like,
Yes.
I'm a little challenge y'all over here. Bring my own little camera print. But like, I was doing a piece back in it must have been in 2020, around the anniversary of the 19th Amendment. Shout out to Amani Gandhi, who reached out to me to do a piece around Black women in suffrage for Rewire. And I came across this pamphlet she wrote in 1910 called How Enfranchisement Could, I'm loosely paraphrasing, but how enfranchisement could prevent lynchings, right? Could stop lynchings. But
Mm.
in there was a quote with no sacredness of the ballot, there could be no sacredness of human life. And that's the quote I have on my wall, just looking at the intersection of, when we're thinking about democracy and our human rights. But Ida B. Wells was, an amazing journalist, definitely a foremother, godmother of modern investigative journalism, but also a dope ass advocate, universal suffrage, voting rights, human rights, and she never divorced herself. Like, okay, I'm a journalist. I'm taking off my Black womanness. I'm taking off my Southern
Right.
womanness. I'm taking
Right.
off my womanness. I'm suddenly a journalist, and I'm a neutral observer. Being a Black woman from the South who was chased out of the South by racialized violence is exactly what helped propel her work, right? A co-founder of the NAACP. All of these things factored into what we celebrate in journalism, right?
Right.
And we know that's a part of the tradition of resistance journalism, of Black journalism, of movement aligned journalism. Historically, that's why so many of our organizations, from the NAACP to SNCC to the Black Panthers, had
Yep.
some type of media component to their work.
Exactly.
And now we see, the way in which organizers and groups are trying to create their own medias. So this has always been deeply rooted for our folks, right? And in so many ways, journalism, this notion of objectivity, which I thought we litigated finally once and for all in 2020. It's like, I really didn't think that was the end of it, y'all. But just in so many ways, we've seen like these grand gestures, all these conversations. I'm pretty sure we were even on a panel together maybe in 2020 around some of this
Yes,
stuff.
we absolutely were.
It was a whole cadre of us, black women in media comms
Yes,
in those
yes,
space, like having a conversation, black fibs, like here we are 4 years later now, seeing the massive layoffs, seeing the backtracking, seeing the white flight almost in a way from the public space and public square. So when we're thinking about like how we're providing alternative spaces, we also land on being stuck on social media, right?
yep,
Social media has
yep.
been vital, so vital, especially in the past 10 years. When we look at the rise of the Black Lives Matter movement, we look at the way people have been able to really organize and engage. I mean, again, going back to the pandemic as well, going back to electoral work, just so many different ways we've been able to move and use these digital technologies. Can you talk to me some about like how we're in this tough rock and a hard place? Because so many of our folks are in the public square, right? Whether it's across these digital spaces. Um, but we are also at the mercy of, and when we're thinking about Twitter, it's, I'm sure Elon wishes he was the VP. I'm sure he wishes he could qualify. He was
Right.
a
A
U.S.
citizen.
born,
Yeah, yes.
yes, so that um, he could be vice president, right? Like his whole little jumping on the stage self, ridiculous. But we're at the mercy of like he bought, like you said, it's been 2 years since he bought Twitter, and everyone's like, oh my god, haha, Elon lost money. These people are billionaires. They don't care if they lose money. There's something greater that they're gaining. Can you talk to me some about like how challenging this is for us? One, because we're reliant on these spaces that these people own and control, but then also too, like the problem that we don't have any safeguards in place anymore. The few that we had fought for are now gone.
Yeah, I think that it's important for us to think about online spaces as a public commons, very similar to, the public square that used to exist back in the day before there was, the same place where they used to go to sell the newspapers, right? Before you could get the newspaper directly delivered to you. That when the paper was printed or a piece of media was printed, you had to run to the public square to try to distribute the information. And that is what online spaces are. At least that is how, especially Black people, how we use them. So shout out to like Black Twitter, right? For example, that we utilize these digital platforms, be it Twitter, Tumblr, Facebook, as a public square to exchange ideas, to exchange thoughts, to promote ideas and thoughts. And as an organizer, absolutely using digital media, being able to utilize digital media in this way and the way that Black folks are uniquely networked. By through our digital platforms, both be it social media or also like messaging apps like WhatsApp. We have been so effective in we're reshaping language, right? We are shifting public attitudes and notions and understandings around things like gender expression, around, what is safe or not safe. To say, and also pushing the ideas and pushing the limits of, what has been socially acceptable through the use of these platforms. And then to see billionaires like Elon Musk and like, what's his name, Zuckerberg. I always joke, it's a real deep cut joke about Boosie getting banned from Instagram, and he didn't know how to say Zuckerberg's name right. So now I almost can't say it right. Call him Zuckerberger. So Zuckerberger, calling all types of political speech, deprioritizing the algorithm. It is a backlash. And as I was saying, it's not just about the money, like you said, it's about power, because $1 billion isn't real. So multiple billions of dollars actually isn't real. But you know what is real? The influence and the power that comes along with controlling those massive amounts of wealth. It's also not lost on me that the way that Black folks over-index in social and digital spaces actually drives the valuations, the $1 billion valuations of these platforms, because we use them, because of the ways that we drive social traffic in trending topics. We, save television shows from being canceled from streaming by talking about them, and having our, live tweeting, projects. We generate and develop content and ideas and intellectual property through our use of these platforms. And so it again is not lost on me that you have a small handful of white people who want to be able to control and manipulate and wield that power, that they're failing miserably at it because they're just certain types of light. You can't catch lightning in a bottle, and that is what that is, because it's our resistance, it's our participation in it, it's our shared experiences of oppression, right, that make these topics trend, that is able to connect us as much as they try to infiltrate and blackfish their way and astroturf their way into making us think that there are other things happening. They can't do that, and it is interesting to me that we have elected officials that don't understand the way that these platforms are being controlled and manipulated, and thus are not able to institute regulations in the proper way. That's actually really troubling to me. It's also interesting to me that there are, smaller, right, less well resourced, of course, tech founders who are also trying to create better and safer spaces, right? Like the Spill app, for example, just to shout out one of them, are Spoutable. So ones that have been, have Black or, BIPOC founders that are trying to create alternative spaces. But it also is on the topic of, corporate and broadcast media. Twitter is still the place where people go to talk about issues and get sources and, pull content for newscasts. And so the digital media, social media space is in a direct and constant conversation and interplay with broadcast mainstream media as well, which is super troubling that there's not a critique, right, of this man's, 2 years of ownership and how he has tanked that platform. People will still repost Twitter conversations and Twitter posts as though it's the same Twitter from pre-Musk.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And I was having a conversation with Isosa Osa about some of this stuff around disinformation, right? Especially what's targeted, particularly at Black communities. And just thinking really about like a lot of the scrutiny placed on outlets like the Shade Room, right? For example, in the way in which they engage and distribute and disseminate information, and some of the ways they responded to the critique, right? From the pressure of the communities and things they're engaging on. But like you were just saying with Elon Musk and Twitter, yes, there have been efforts, and Free Press has been a part of this, and leading the charge in many ways around platform accountability. But like Elon Musk literally has a serious case of the Night Kings who going to check me, boo. Like we need
Oh,
Arya Stark to come
absolutely.
in. We need
Absolutely.
Arya Stark to come in and handle this for us because
Oh, he sued Free
it's
Press. He
he
filed a
sued Free
lawsuit.
Press.
Yes.
Absolutely, yes. He filed a lawsuit
I
because
said,
y'all was
where?
coming for his coins.
I said, where do we work?
But just thinking as we're looking ahead, because everything you said is spot on about where we are and what we need to be doing. But like, there are tools, there are resources, there are things that people are developing, like the Media 2070 project, which is celebrating its 4th anniversary this week. Happy 4-year-old! Thank you. You're almost out of toddler
Yeah,
stage,
almost, almost. Okay, we
almost
can
in
walk.
kindergarten. Yes. So can you talk to us about Media 2070 and what is it and how it offers another vision of a path forward for how we can engage in media that is less extractive and more investing in the communities and people around us?
Yeah, absolutely. And, thank you so much for congratulating us and celebrating us and having me on to talk about, celebrating 4 years of this amazing project, actually born out of organizing by Black staffers at Free Press. In that 2020 racial reckoning moment, not just about, creating overtures or, historic pronouncements, right, about racial justice, but really birthing a project to work towards systemic solutions. And that solution, the beginning of that solution really is reparations and repair. And we're advancing a new body of work within the reparations movement to not just talk about the role of the media, but to hold media accountable, both the media system, media actors, our federal institutions like the FCC for their roles, all of their roles in anti-Black racial harm. And so Media 2070 is in the tradition, right, of the Black liberation movement, celebrating and lifting up. We talked about, Ida B. Wells and other, pioneers of the Black press. We're going to be coming up on that 200-year anniversary of the founding of the Black press in a couple of years here. But also, the framing is Media 2070 is the name of the project because we're an Afrofuturist project. And so we say that we, time travel to the future. We won media reparations by 2070, and now we're back to organize to get towards that future that we know that we all deserve. And our kind of tagline is building Black media power, and we really define that as Black people having the capital as well as the control of the means of production to control, produce, and distribute our stories. And that means vastly our stories. That means our narrative and non-narrative, and fiction and nonfiction stories. We define media really broadly in that, and we partner with journalists and media makers and creatives to do this work. We use research, we use culture and narrative strategy, and we use kind of tactical experimental strategies to help build towards that. And I'm really grateful to be a part of it. I'll share with you to follow up with your listeners about we've made a groundbreaking documentary film called Black in the Newsroom that details the story and experiences of a Black reporter at the Arizona Republic, which is a Gannett-owned outlet here in Phoenix, Arizona, that talks about, though they had such a diverse workforce, it was found that by about $20,000 to $30,000 pay gap by gender and race, which this woman experienced, firsthand, not being able to, having to decide between paying her rent and buying groceries, quite literally, while also doing excellent, beautiful, award-winning reporting at the same time, right? For the biggest newspaper in the state. We also have the Black Future Newsstand, which we just made its fourth stop, this time in Chicago, where we bring people into the future. It's a portal. We feel an actual physical newsstand that we designed and had created with a Black architecture firm and the artist Alicia Walters and groups like Seal and Intelligent Mischief, where people get to experience the newsstand of the future, where we've won media reparations and we have a media system that loves Black people. So we fill it with Black-owned outlets, as well as zines and newspapers that are Black independently owned, as well as artwork and comic books and graphic novels and all those types of things. And so that's our work. We're really excited. We also launched our membership consortium so people can join in with us now, and we're looking forward to another 4 years and beyond, until we've made reparations real.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love being able to see like what is the possibility, what are the opportunities, and how can we move forward, right? Because we're thinking about all the different things that are going on, it can very easy to lose hope and to feel powerless. But I feel like the work that y'all are doing, that Free Press does in general, but specifically the Media 2070 project, which has been really great to watch unfold over the last several years, is giving us a sense of that hope, but also what is the potential power that we can collectively build and wield together to make
Yeah,
our demands, right? Like power
exactly.
concedes nothing without demand,
Without a
right?
demand, exactly, exactly.
Absolutely. So
And I
just
think,
can you just tell us, yeah, I was gonna say final words. I was gonna toss it back to you. Final words, final thoughts.
yeah, I also wanted to just lift up that one of the pathways towards winning the media system that we want is also repair. And so we have a body of work that I also want to share, where that we call reparative journalism, where we have studied, well, what are just transition processes that have taken communities from harm to repair, from trauma to repair. And so we are building out curriculums that we're sharing with college students as well as in newsrooms, where we're walking people through, what are reparative journalism practices, and journalism that can have a culture of care, journalism that can have a culture of respect for communities and a sense of service and duty to the stories of those communities, and that is not extractive and harmful. So we're also helping to build those building blocks, because we know that we need to, count the harm, right, and detail the harms. We need to build and dream into the hopeful future, but we also are trying to lay the foundation for the ways that we're going to get there as well.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Tia. Can you tell folks where can they follow you? Where can they find out more about Media 2070, and all the good stuff that you were just talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. So our website is mediareparations.org. We're also on YouTube at Media 2070. Free Press is freepress.net. And you can find us on Instagram also at Media 2070 to follow our work. tap in with us. And you can also email racialjustice@freepress.net if you want to email us and tap in.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you, and I look forward to following up more about all of the things going on. But I really appreciate you tapping in. I know there's a lot going on, fourth anniversary, and also we're on the eve of an election. So I really do
Right.
appreciate you. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you for all the amazing work that you're always doing, and looking forward to the relaunch of the podcast also.
Thank you.